All praises, family. We're here together once again. This is Revelations.Unveiled Detroit, and came across an article of extreme interest, of extreme importance, something we must have a conscious evaluation upon, something that has reached the heights of the Supreme Court, something that we have been echoing since our being brought here upon these shores for the bondage of which we have served for nearly half a millennium. The slave patrols that were constructed originally to return runaway slaves and then evolved into what is now known as the policing forces of the Americas, from the cities and to the townships, to the counties, and to the states, and to the federal institutions. These armed military soldiers that are distributed throughout the various areas of the populations to so-called serve and protect. For some, it has been service and protection, and for others, it has been disenfranchisement, terrorism, death, and imprisonment. And so we will be reviewing an article by Brother James King that is entitled F the Police Matters. And we began. I was beaten by police for no reason. Now the Supreme Court should give me justice. When I was 21, plainclothes police officers who never identified themselves as law enforcement officers choked me unconscious, beat me, and arrested me. I had broken no law. Ever since, I have battled a system designed to protect those rogue officers from justice rather than protect my rights. On March 20th, the U.S. Supreme Court is scheduled to decide whether it will hear my case and address the government's request that the court create yet another level of special protection so out of control officers are never held individually accountable for their actions. In 2014, I was a college student. I was walking down the sidewalk in Michigan, going between a summer job and my internship at a local nonprofit. Two men in jeans, t-shirts, and baseball caps approached me. They asked me who I was, and I told them, but they didn't believe me. One of the men took my wallet from my pocket. Thinking I was being mugged, I yelled for someone to call the police and tried like hell to get away. The men tackled me, and one of them choked me until I lost consciousness. I thought it was over. When I woke up, I bit the guy in hopes of breaking free. He then punched me in the face over and over until every capillary in my eyes burst and I couldn't move. I heard sirens and was relieved. The police were finally coming, but relief turned to confusion when the police arrested me, not the men who attacked me. Unbeknownst to me, or the many witnesses who videotaped the scene and called 911, the muggers were cops. They were looking for a nonviolent fugitive who looked nothing like me. When uniformed police showed up, the system immediately went into action to protect the officers with no concerns for my rights. One police officer forced people to delete their videos in and of the incident. Others took me to the hospital where I was handcuffed to my bed and my notes of what had happened were confiscated. Police and prosecutors charged me with felonies, put me in jail, then put me on trial with all the hope that I would settle and therefore not have the credibility to hold these officers individually accountable for their actions. A plea deal was offered on the first morning of trial, but I had done nothing wrong, so I didn't accept it. A jury acquitted me on all charges. In 2016, I sued the officers, but once again, the system closed ranks. This time, government lawyers argued even if the officers violated my rights, they were entitled to something called qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is a non-constitutional rule the Supreme Court created in 1982 that says you can't sue an officer who violates your rights unless an earlier court ruling found that the very same action by officers was unconstitutional. How on point does the violation need to be? In a recent case, officers were granted qualified immunity when they let their police dog attack a man who surrendered by sitting with his hands up, even though an earlier case found it was unconstitutional for officers to let their dog bite a man who surrendered by lying down. The fact that the suspect was sitting was enough of a difference from the court's perspective to grant the officers qualified immunity. The district court agreed with the government and dismissed my case. However, a federal appeals court reversed that decision. It ruled that what the officers did violate my rights, and there were cases that said as much. Qualified immunity did not apply. My fight for justice continues now to the U.S. Supreme Court. On one side, I am asking the court to make it easier to hold officers accountable when they violate the Constitution. On the other, the federal government is asking the court to create yet another special protection for police. What happened to me can happen to literally anyone. And the one thing I have learned from this terrible process is that the system protects itself. At every turn, the officers who beat me have never had to face the ugly truths of what they did. That day in 2014 changed my life. Now I'm fighting to change the system. What happened to me should never happen to anyone else. And that was a USA Today article by Brother James King. He was assaulted by members of a joint federal state task force. He is appealing his case to the U.S. Supreme Court to hold the officers to account. And so, family, this case, all the way up to the Supreme Court, is a illustrative outline to justify the statement when we say, F the police. There is a difference in regard to the police. To one demographic, it is the standard of law, the enforcement of the Constitution. To another population, it is an institution of the slave patrols. It is the line that separates the society from those regarded as having true citizenships, being true Americans, and those regarded as being 3/5 human or subhuman or not human or black. Many brothers and sisters on the soils of America have experienced this same scenario, being attacked, being accused, being stopped and frisked by the system's arm of oppression, the armed military forces of the various municipalities and counties and cities and states, used as a weapon against the oppressed population. Those who live in fear of that institution that is so-called there to serve and protect. The institution that has assembled itself into evil cabals called benevolent and fraternal guilds and societies, where they lobby for these qualified immunity protections, whereby they're never held to account for the degradation and abuse and the torture and the injury and the deaths of so many innocent citizens of the country. And so, family, we shall follow this story. We shall give it the due attention. This could be the case that cracks the hand of the dragon that stabs into the belly of that beast to draw out the wicked bile as we continue to pull out the bricks of the foundation of this continent of confusion, the boldness of Babylon, as we continue to sojourn as the soldiers of the superior spirituality. And so, family, we continue to persevere and endure, and Lord willing, we will reassemble and reconvene to examine our spiritual existence in this carnal container. And until we are together again, I love you. I love you. I love you. This is Revelations.Unveiled. Detroit.